Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. My name is Michelle Benjamin from Leasecake. We are going to get started with our presentation in just a minute. Before we do that, while people are joining, I'll go through a few housekeeping items. We are recording this and we'll be sharing it out with everybody afterwards, just in case you want to listen again. And we would love your questions. So please feel free to make this interactive. You have two ways of sending those over. You can either use the Q&A or the chat box. We'll be keeping an eye on them throughout. So don't be shy. Feel free to send them over at any point. And if we don't get to them during the chat, we'll talk about them at the end. But yeah, we're here to talk about pickleball, something everybody loves and knows very well, probably. So very excited. And I will pass it over to Taj to introduce our guest.
Wonderful. Well, welcome everybody to Leasecake Live. This is our webcast, and thanks, Michelle, for the great introduction. We've got tons of registrants from all over. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We've got some international Latin American customers as well, and different folks that really are here to learn. So we are in the education business. I don't know if you've heard that before. While we are a software company, we just feel it's really important to share stories, bring thought leaders together, not just customers, but partners as well across the industry. So as Michelle said, definitely want to keep this interactive. Please post your questions on chat, raise your hand, and we'll do our best to answer them live. So we make it interactive, and frankly, it's a lot more fun that way anyway. It's how we're wired. So my name is Taj Adhab, and I'm the founder of Leasecake 6.5 years ago, and we're coming at you from Winter Park, Florida, just a little north of Orlando. And this is a backdrop this time. I'm so sorry, because we have a full-on team luncheon that's happening just around the corner, which is in our cake quarters. And that's where Leasecake was kind of inspired by, founded at a diner over a cup of coffee. So we feel that the best conversations happen around a kitchen table. So next week, you're going to see the full-on kitchen live, and we're really excited to continue these learning series. So we're serving tens of thousands of locations and hundreds of brands, and we're real estate and location management made easy for restaurants and services-based retail. We help reduce real estate risk and protect your locations so you can focus on your growth, right? Focus on building your restaurant empire, your pickleball empire, or your massage or service-based retail empire, not necessarily building your real estate business. So today, I'm going to use this in air quotes here, serving aces in franchise growth and real estate innovation. I definitely want to welcome our guest today. Heading up Ace Pickleball Club is Chief Growth Officer Diego Pacheco. Welcome.
Thanks, Taj. Appreciate you guys having me.
Absolutely. So, we always start with stories, and the origin story of you, Diego. What are your roots? How did you get started in the industry? How did you land as a chief growth officer? Why don't you spend a few minutes introducing yourself?
Yeah. Well, I honestly, the least expected role of my career is where I'm at today. So I, got my start back in high school doing residential real estate. Always thought residential was going to be the path. Spent summers in college doing residential in New York City and really just wanted to do that. Parents always know best, I will say. Didn't think that at the time. My dad introduced me to commercial real estate professionals and encouraged me to go down that route. So I ended up at CBRE right after college graduation in what was known as their WIL program, recent graduate rotational group, cycled through a few different things. And I said to myself, commercial real estate sure is boring. And if I'm going to do something in commercial real estate, it's going to be related to something I like, which at that point was shopping. So I really immersed myself in retail real estate. I did retail investment sales, retail valuation, retail leasing, you name it. I was doing that at CBRE for my first year of my career. And ultimately, at the end of that, ended up with a team that was doing national brokerage for acquisitions and dispositions for a few large retailers. Our biggest clients at the time were Kroger, Rite Aid. There's a few PetSmart deals we were doing, Office Depot. Myself, I was thrown into working on Rite Aid, and a new client that we just taken on at the time called Sky Zone Trampoline Parks.
Right.
And yeah, and myself, I went to undergrad in St. Louis, and that's where Sky Zone's first location was. I was, like any college student, involved in a lot of fraternity rush things, and we would do all of our events there. So I was very well acquainted with Sky Zone. I was like, well, this is cool. I'm 23 years old. I get to work on use that I very much have interacted with before and enjoyed. So I took on the Sky Zone account at the time, and everybody kind of thought it was crazy that we were working on this because at the end of the day, what longevity did putting trampolines indoors really have? And
Yeah.
where that industry has gone in just the course of a decade, with all the big money from Blackstone to Carlyle to Goldman Sachs now touching the trampoline park industry in some way. So when we started my career, I met Jay Dietrich, who was internal at Sky Zone. He was one of the real estate associates, and we teamed up. He was 24, I was 23. We said, okay, there's 5 Sky Zones open across the country. How do we position this? How do we grow it to what it is? The rest was history. We learned a lot of lessons in that 5-year period of working together, and we ultimately did 100+ deals in the course of that 5 years. A lot of it was through your typical brokerage process of going out and finding the sites and identifying them and going through that. But a lot of it we realized was through relationship development and building up that Rolodex of individuals in the industry to call up, because we needed to figure out when the spaces were becoming available before a tenant even left. We needed to understand lease expirations that were coming, subletting, all of the different strategies to be able to find the right spaces. Because it's not just a practice of driving around the market and calling numbers on a sign and saying, hey, this space looks vacant. We know by the time a sign goes up, there's already 20 LOIs on it. So we
Yeah.
have to get ahead of that. And that's what led to our large scale. I said my goodbye to Sky Zone. I said, okay, I'm never going to do something that crazy again. I went off to full-time MBA to get my MBA, and cycled through the acquisitions, private equity side of the business, working with the landlords, learning all about that part. And then in 2020, when COVID hits and pickleball emerges, Jay, my counterpart from Sky Zone, calls me. And at that point, Taj, which is the connection to you, I was working at JLL Technologies in conjunction with their venture capital fund. I was living in San Francisco. I
Right.
had learned some things about fundraising and building a company, and I was starting, my wheels were starting to turn in my head. And Jay calls me and goes, what if we use all that experience we got at Sky Zone to launch an indoor pickleball concept? I go, that has some legs. I said, call me when you hit this benchmark. He kept calling me every couple months, hitting the benchmarks. And finally, when he hit enough benchmarks, he got me and some of the other Sky Zone team to come on board. And we officially launched Ace Pickleball Club in January of 2023. And now we're at where we're at today.
My gosh. So like just a little over a year. It's phenomenal. I appreciate you sharing that because you do have a unique approach, and you're absolutely right. These big boxes that in some cases, they're in desperate need of reinvention, or how do you help to offset the risk of a tenant that happens to have a long-term lease and they're trying to figure out creative ways. You are, I think, a great solution for sure because of just your approach. I think you've got a very thoughtful methodology behind it because it's not just uh, uh, the activity and everyone that's wanting to get in that space. You have to have the experience and the maturity of doing it before, like you did at Sky Zone, but being cautious and being careful. So I know you started a year and a half ago. And you've got just a handful of locations, right? Is that right? And where are you at? What's your plan for this year?
Yeah, so when we launched in January 2023, we had bootstrapped, we had our funding. So I think I've told you, we had some Orange Theory executives behind us, founder of Rumble Boxing, Andy Stensler. The whole
Yeah.
concept has always been modeled on being fitness. We want to be what is akin to the golf course, but for pickleball, indoor recreational tournament play. So
Yeah.
with that in mind, we zoomed forward, released our franchise agreement in February of 2023. Since that time, we've sold north of 115 franchise licenses across the country. And,
Wow.
when we announced, got our fundraising done, we signed lease number 1 for our corporate headquarters in the Atlanta, Georgia MSA with Brixmor Property Group, who's been a big strategic partner to us. We now have 4 leases signed with them across the country. But as I was telling you, we really didn't kick off the real estate process with our franchisees until ICSC of 2023. So exactly a year ago. And from that time, we now have 3 open and operating locations. And as you know, in commercial real estate, to get from an LOI to lease to building permits, landlord work, these deals can sometimes take anywhere upwards of 2 years before you're even open and operating. So we'll be opening unit number 4 this June in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. by the end of the year, we expect to have 15 locations open and operating across the country.
Wow, phenomenal. And you've got a great pipeline of another 100 plus that have already signed up.
I have that has been my last week, is getting some leases to the finish line. And we have a bunch of big announcements coming in the next 2 weeks.
Oh, that's exciting. And I just so everybody knows, he did not disclose any secrets to me. So don't ask me if I need to, have any insider info. But that's super great. As it relates to footprint, let's talk about the size of location that I think is well suited for you. I mean, how many courts inside of a facility are you looking at, and what's the square footage?
Yeah. So, back to venture capital roots and understanding a new business and building and how to stand up a company to be successful. Everybody, there's a lot, as I told you, I won't call it competition in the space. I'll call it activity in the space. Everybody has their own take on how to build a successful pickleball facility. At Ace Pickleball Club, we're always going to be very conservative. We're always going to be straight down and have guardrails up in terms of what we're delivering, the quality, the experience. We're focused on growing the game of pickleball, delivering the best possible experience to our members. And that's reflected through the locations we select, through the operations, and the quality of facility we ultimately build and the programming we put onto them. So, at the end of the day for us, and, we'll always be out there saying, okay, we're looking for certain parameters. Those parameters anywhere from 20 to 50,000 square feet. But our location analysis and how many clubs or courts we're putting in a club really comes down to demographics. From Sky Zone days, we really learned what it was to locate a site, to understand those demographics. There's a lot of science that goes into it. We are exclusively partnered with Buxton Analytics, who has been an amazing partner for us from our Sky Zone days up until Ace Pickleball Club days. We're ingesting the data from who our customers are coming. We're taking all of that. We're able to track a bunch of different pieces and ultimately build with Buxton to understand who that consumer is, what kind of market demand can support a certain kind of club. And that's how we decide where we're going. So, if you catch me at ICSC, I'll tell you 20 to 50,000 square feet. But the magic I won't give away is how do we determine really which markets are going to get the 20,000, what's going to get the 50,000. It all comes down to demographics. It all comes down to how many courts we think a market can support. And it's something that a lot of people really haven't been able to put a number on. Here we're very much, I believe in retail and business building as an art and a science. We really skew towards the science with the art mix. And, it's our secret sauce, but, for the most part, you'll see us locating in anywhere from Voorhees, New Jersey. We just opened up a couple weeks ago, 22,000 square feet, 7 indoor courts, all the way up to, we just announced Vernon Hills, Illinois, 47,000 square feet, 16 courts. It's quite a range. And, we look for it. Eventually somebody will figure out the science, but it'll be a few years.
Wow. Congratulations on that. That's exciting stuff. Big footprints. And you mentioned 2 years potentially in terms of identifying a site to full on opening. I mean, it's got to depend, right? In terms of what kind of improvements, what kind of new development you need to have to get it ready. I mean, what's the shortest duration?
Shortest duration, 6 to 7 months. And that would be, a vacant Bed Bath and Beyond kind of profile of a site. And we have a city that's really excited about the use, and we have a landlord that's really excited, and we get through that lease in 30 days and we get those permits pulled in 90 days. That certainly has been done. And that is happening for us in a few key markets across the US right now. It's always the balance. You have those groups that are there, you have what's in the middle, and then you have these 2-year groups where, we're working through with a lot of big developers right now where we'll do deals that are 2 to 3 years out, but they have to be at the right rent basis. We have to feel really good about what's happening in the market because, as I've said, no competition in the market. It's activity is what we call it. And if we have the right real estate deal and the right partner and the right location that we have conviction in, we're fine signing a lease that's not going to come to fruition for 2 years, no matter how many people in the pickleball space come around us, because we've studied enough about the market and we know our model and the cost basis we're in at. It's going to be hard to replicate. At the end of the day, building a successful business is all about barrier to entry and making sure you have the right partner and right model.
Yeah. Well, you're probably seeing that the number of de novo large scale developments is probably at the lowest it's ever been, right? In the last 5, maybe even 10 years because of the cost of capital. And the real estate market is incredibly competitive. And yes, you're right, there's tons of activity on the franchise side, but identifying that perfect box that you need is definitely takes science. So related to that, it's, I guess what are the things that you are trying to identify that make that site specifically unique? I know you talked about demographics, but how do you know what the pickleball audience is? This is not building a restaurant concept or a new QSR. So there's got to be very unique attributes, and it's different than people that, youth and families that want to be in a
Yeah.
sky zone.
It's, well, it was the same thing with trampoline parks. Who wanted to be at a trampoline park back in the day? There was no historical data with that. And, from my background, I used to work at Prudential's fund, and then I worked at Hines, which were funds that demanded a lot of historical data from the tenants we were working with. We wanted to see at least 5 years of historical incomes. You do all the forecasting. It was a science. There was very little art to it. I think the most fun part about Sky Zone and now the pickleball space is that we're taking a bet on what the future can be. All of our franchise partners are. We see the vision. We built one industry from the trampoline park side. Now it's on to pickleball. And what's different about pickleball is, to your point, this really didn't take off until COVID. And we're learning what the demographic is and who it appeals to. There's been so much movement in the space in the last 4 years, from institutional capital flooding into the space, whether it's backing a paddle company or major leagues or teams or indoor facilities, whatever it may be, that we know this is here to stay. But the demographic for pickleball, the difference in the space is that, yeah, it's a sport, but I think it's truly the first sport where there's not a lot of apprehension or for what's a better word for it? I would say you're not intimidated to get on the court and actually play because
Yeah.
it's a smaller court at the end of the day. The barrier to entry, it doesn't take a lot you don't have to be an Olympic level athlete. Like if you're swimming laps or you're running or you're playing baseball or football, you don't have to learn a lot of rules. All you have to do is get on the court, whack the ball back and forth. You learn the simple rules. It's a smaller court. Yeah, you get a good workout from it. But also, the barrier to entry is you see a lot of people coming to the sport. So I always joke, our parking lot at our location in Roswell, Georgia, has everything from a 1980 Honda Civic all the way to a Rolls Royce. Everything from a 3-year-old to an 85-year-old on the court. The sport really does appeal to everyone. And as we see the sport getting more and more embedded in American culture, we look to see colleges. There's a lot of club teams that are right now. We hosted a university night a few months ago at our Roswell facility, and we had everything, including my alma mater, UVA, who actually won. It was really exciting. But they were there doing the club team, and NCAA is looking at offering scholarships, making it a college sanctioned sport. Olympics are considering it for the 2032 games. All of these things that point to that pickleball's here to stay. So ultimately, when you ask me what the demographic is, I say it's everybody who wants to get on the court. And the big difference is, besides just the low barrier to entry to the sport, it's also a very social game because it's a smaller court, which I personally believe is why this game had such a launch from COVID time, because people wanted social distancing, but they also were craving that human interaction and activity that just wasn't sitting on a computer and drinking a drink and, not being physically active. That's what pickleball offered.
Yeah. Are you finding that there are certain clauses in your real estate lease that give you maybe certain amount of power, whether you're a strong co-tenant and you've got co-tenancy provisions or exclusivity? What kinds of, I guess, more tenant-friendly conditions are you able to put in place as you negotiate with various landlords?
Yeah, well, any landlord you ask, whether it's Kimco, Brixmor, everybody, they'll tell you I'm a hard one to make a deal with.
Yeah.
I always, our mantra at Ace Pickleball Club is that we would rather do 20 good leases a year versus 60 bad leases just to plant flags. And
Yes.
so, because of that, there are a lot of things that we're just not negotiable on. And ultimately, given our reputation and our ability to execute, there are things that we have been able to partner with these landlords on to make sure we're both set up for success. Because I always start our calls with, this isn't about what's good for me, what's good for you. It's about a partnership because we're going to be in this for the next 10 years together and, willing this is a great business opportunity and we've had success the option periods as well. So, as far as your question on exclusivity, I'd be remiss if I wasn't doing my job and making sure we have pickleball exclusivities and things like that. As far as this, the narrative we've always started off a year ago when we really began this was the biggest question from landlords, re-exclusives and restrictions and everything was, what is your use? And we found it very beneficial. Where, well, you know what? We're building a business. Let's start the narrative on what it means to be a tenant in the pickleball space. And what we settled on, which has become the narrative for the industry, is you have two verticals. First vertical is your entertainment groups, restaurant, bar. They are a totally different build out cost, about $7.5 million to build those out. Plus, a lot of them are ground up, your chicken and pickles, Pickle Social. They're awesome because they introduce people to the sport. Totally different consumer from us. I better said they're the Top Golf for pickleball.
Sure.
What we are is we're building the golf course for pickleball. So we're applying, as I said, our backers are Rumble Boxing, Orange Theory executives. We look at this from a fitness model. A lot of people are actually signing up because this is what they're substituting for their exercise. So indoor recreational play, that consumer that's coming a few times a week. So when we get to the exclusives and such, of course, we're going to host private events. We do need the flexibility to have alcohol with those events, but we would never let alcohol near our courts because if alcohol gets near those courts, the big secret people don't know is that that's a lot of downtime. And each court you have is a couple $100,000 in revenue. And so we know from our operational experience how to do that. My point being is when we get to this on the exclusives and what we are, we're a recreational or a racket sports type of use. And a lot of landlords love that because they're looking to program us with other small shop restaurant space. A lot of our co-tenants love it because back to your former question on demographics, we're bringing in a wide, very attractive demographic who is spending money at their centers. So in Roswell, Georgia, we're co-tenanted with Publix, Jimmy John's, McAllister's, Frontgate, which is an upscale furniture outlet store. All of those people are seeing the benefit of our co-tenancy analysis. And so, landlords are really happy to have us in there. We're always looking for that pickleball exclusive, but, we're pretty flexible aside from that.
No, that's good, and I'm glad you kind of enlightened the audience here on the two different concepts. You got the entertainment, higher build out, but you are the golf course of pickleball, very serious. But the nice thing from a co-tenant's perspective, you have multiple day parts. So let's talk about hours of operation. You probably go into the evening because people at the end of the day, they want to do a little workout, they want to enjoy, etc. It's a little bit social, but it's structured, right? So
Exactly.
let's talk about those times of use. What's your opening and what's your closing?
So we're open from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Okay.
This is the biggest thing. I think it's the most interesting challenge in the pickleball space right now. My whole day is spent, talking with the national landlords, syncing in real time with our leadership team to understand what our traffic is, getting on the demographic side of things again, as I said, again, our secret sauce and how we're determining how many courts, what kind of location, what rent premium will work and won't work. Because you talk to my counterparts, they're going to say, well, Diego could pay a higher rent than market there, but he can't pay a market rent here. How does that work? And I'll never tell you. So my whole point is we're analyzing how many members we can get on that court. Taj, what it really boils down to at the end of the day is you've got to have the best member experience. That's number one. Because the member's not having a good experience, they're going to stop paying for that membership. At Roswell, Georgia, we're charging $129 a month for unlimited membership and play. And we were the first player in the space to introduce that unlimited membership where your membership comes with everything, your paddles, your balls, your tournaments, all of that. Where a lot of the players before that were charging an introduction fee, a monthly membership fee, court time fee, a breathing fee, a thank you for being here fee, whatever it is,
My
before
gosh.
you knew it, you were paying $400 a month to play six times a month. So we really look at this as, that kind of situation. So what it comes down to though is court capacity. That's the hottest question. And, court capacity, what kind of revenue can your club produce? All of those things, it boils down to at the end of the day, how many memberships are you going to sell? And, we're very much syncing to what is the right court capacity against the rent, against the demographics. So to your point, 6 to 10 a.m., it's a long time in the day to operate. And you get your people who are early birds that get there, play from 6 to 10, obviously before work hours, after work hours, and be your busier time. Between those hours, you actually still see the parking lot pretty full. Believe it or not, there's a lot of people, especially with the advent of flexible work, that are in there during those times. But one thing we've introduced is called our midday memberships. We realized that was a little bit of a slower time because most people are at work. So for your cost-constrained consumer that might be on a fixed income because they're retired or whatever it may be, or they just want to play during a slower time, we were able to offer in Roswell at 50% of our normal membership cost. They could come in and play between X and Y hours. I believe it's 11 to 2 in Roswell.
Yeah, it improves your yield. I mean, it's a win-win all the way around. I mean, back to you were saying earlier, Diego, it's like you're in partnership with the landlord. You're almost in partnership with the other tenants in that space because they want you to succeed. And certainly, when we started Lease Cake, when I founded Lease Cake 6.5 years ago, our market was saying, if the landlord succeeds, I succeed. And landlords were saying, if our tenants succeed, I succeed. So we completely agree. I mean, this is an ecosystem. So how do we get all the parties out of each other's way, focus on the things that they need to focus on? And you can build this incredibly powerful empire that helps Americans become more healthy, get them more active, introduce them to a new sport. And it's a brand new category. I mean, that's really exciting stuff.
It's everything that drives us here is grow the game, create the best member experience. And I think you're the first one to ask me about operating hours. And I think that's the most important part because this court ratio and making sure people can get on the court, it is all a math equation and operation study at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And it's something that's going to take a few years for everybody to figure out what is the right balance.
Yeah. Well, it's an incredible value that you're offering, right, at $129 for that unlimited. And whether that continues or not, I think the spirit of it is you got to make it easy. Give people quick access, and then ultimately it does become a math equation. It becomes something like how do you change a little bit of the knobs and dials to create incentives to have them fill up some of that idle capacity. And again, everybody in that shopping center wins. So makes a ton of sense. Let's talk about your franchisee support. What systems and tools are you finding that they need to succeed? Is it keeping track of their leases, keeping track of locations, permits, and the like?
Yeah. Well, I'll say it's a lot of things. And in real estate, it's a lot of therapy, a lot of project management. I always joke, when you're in a franchise-based organization doing real estate, 50% of it's therapy. Franchisees, they sign up with you because they're smart, entrepreneurial business people who have a proven track record. And at ACE, we're at a point where we get a lot of applications, a lot of people calling that want to get into the ACE network. And instead of us saying, okay, thank you, please come join us, we're actually asking them questions to figure out if they're the right fit. And, for us, that's driving everything because we want to make sure the ACE family is full of members that are contributing and really see the vision. Because for us, franchising, you have a lot of franchise failure across the market over the last 50 years. And building the playbook, building the team, doing it right, and getting the partners that are going to follow the playbook, that's how you succeed. So, for us, our franchise partners, we really believe in you got to roll out the full system and you have to have checks and balances. So for us right now, I think we have about 40 franchise groups active across those 115 licenses. We have a full-time team of 35 people, mostly based in Atlanta, Georgia. We just signed an office lease last month. We now have corporate headquarters rocking and rolling over there. It's really exciting times.
Where is that? Where in Atlanta?
Roswell, right
Oh,
next.
in Roswell. Okay, I'm going to
Yeah.
be in Atlanta next week, so I'll probably drop by for
Please
sure.
do. I'll love to have you over. So, for franchise support, we know it's everything because we went through this with Sky Zone. We brought over, former operations professionals from Sky Zone, the whole development team from Sky Zone in the early days, myself on the real estate side. We know what we need to do, put the systems in place, grow it, season, polish it up. So from the moment one, we have our franchise sales group that's focused on what I said, qualifying, making sure that people can follow the playbook. Because franchisees, they don't want to be creative. They just want to set up a business. They're really good operators. They're good at following a playbook. They want to associate themselves with a national brand. That's us. Once they get through our litmus test of if you're a good partner and you're right to go, you're on to me on the real estate side of things. You ask any of my franchise partners, they start off, they love me, they hate me, hate me, hate me, hate me, love me, hate me, hate me, hate me, hate me, they sign their lease, love me. That's the most popular thing. But it's because we got to keep them in guidelines in terms of making sure the secret sauce that we are cooking up in the background, the deals, positioning, all of that actually comes to fruition so we can get them the best deal to set them up for success. Once they're past real estate and the full support we offer them beyond just our internal team of myself and my real estate associate, Madison, we also have our brokerage networks. I mean, the team's just huge and who we're managing under real estate. They move on to our design team, which has 10 plus professionals on it, from actual architects to contractors, GCs, and their whole outsourced team that they have below them as well. Once they're in development, everything's going on there because there's a million pieces between actually signing that lease and making sure your doors get open. Then you're on to the operations side of thing, which is our biggest side of the house, 20 plus professionals. Marketing, getting you on the right pieces to before you open your doors, you actually realize we're setting you up for success. Our operations team is there 3 weeks before you open. Actually, I was in Voorhees, New Jersey, scrubbing courts with a toothbrush a few weeks ago. It's a team effort. There's no job that's too menial for anybody at the company. And then once you're past operations, it's just continuing to go through. So we really are a full service franchise support. We've heard from some people in the industry, why is ACE's team so big? And always the question to that is, it's because we know the support it takes to grow this thing and scale it to where it needs to be the leader in the indoor pickleball space.
Yeah, yeah. And you're not just trying to plant a flag, like you said, and try to grab market share and plan with the end in mind, an exit, for example. I mean, you're just trying to be the brand that helps transform the industry and sets a new standard in a category. The exit success will happen for sure.
I think the key word you said there is exit, and there's no exit if you don't have a successful business.
Bingo, baby. Yeah, reminds me of our journey when we started. We've got several stories we were talking about before we opened up the floor here. All right, so then let's talk about other potential revenue models. We've got a question in from one of our guests. What about sponsorships with equipment and branding and co-branding? Are you looking at that? Are you open to that right now, or is that just going to be a distraction?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And actually, back to how I met, Scott Williamson and how I got connected to you guys at Lease Cake. When I was working at JLL with him, I was focused on partnerships for our venture capital backed companies and a few of the other things we were selling at JLL Technologies. And so my mind was very much set on partnerships are the way, you can build, buy, partner. And I was like, we got to partner with everybody under the sun. And I told our leadership team from the early, I was employee number 4. And I was telling everybody on the early days, we got a partner. And they told me, you're crazy. And I said, I'm a partnerships professional. I know this. Don't question me. I know what's best. I am always happy to be proven wrong. And I was proven wrong. Our CEO and founder, Jay Dietrich, told me the space is too nascent to partner with anybody because people are going to go boom and bust in the course of a year. And we're building the indoor facilities where people actually come and play the game, climate controlled, premium conditions. The partnerships are going to come to us and we're going to be able to choose who we want in a year or two. And I said, well, that's dumb, Jay. We'll agree to disagree. And I was proven really wrong. We have our VP of partnerships in the company, Mookie McDevitt, and it's funny. He'll tell you he hasn't signed a partnership deal to date. We're agnostic. We try things out. We see what's working, what's not working, and we ultimately, continue forward with caution with a lot of the partnerships. Of course, there are groups we're associating with, but not exclusively yet, because this space has a lot of way to go. And our biggest thing in partnership space right now is we're working through a tournament series with a lot of big brands that you would notice their names from across the country. But I'd say in our actual physical locations, the biggest partnership we've done to date which isn't exclusive, we wouldn't, but it is helpful and our customers love it, is our paddle demo program. You walk into our club, you want to try out a new paddle, you want to figure out if you want to buy it. We have all the paddles for free use right behind the counter. And these paddle companies are happy to give us their demo paddles for free because, hey, it's leading to point of sale for them ultimately. And our consumers are getting to try it out. So, it's things like that that ultimately help us figure out what the right course for partnership is. And I do think there will be a point where we do ink, exclusive partnerships, but it's when the moment's right and the business is actually, the industry is actually matured.
Yeah, absolutely. No, when I was at Disney there for a decade as an Imagineer, like learning very early on, they had tons of participants, different industries that would license their name, and then over time they started to figure out how to create an entire group around partnerships. And I mean, you can read all about it for sure. So that's a very, very smart approach because these rising tides, they lift all boats. So the entire industry is coming together with being able to test different markets. So let's talk about, obviously, you're a US focused play. Or are you looking at North America, Latin America, or is that a little further down the road? This is actually a question that just came in a few minutes ago.
Yeah. So, I think for us, again, like staying in our lane, staying very core and doing what we do well is number one in year
Yeah.
one. We're a franchise-based organization. With Sky Zone, we did ultimately do franchising in EMEA and set up across there. That's absolutely on the roadmap for Ace Pickleball Club, but it's got to be the right time. It's got to be the right partner because we think setting up a business stateside is hard. Take it to another country where the real estate specs are different, the laws are different, the languages, that's a lot. And we're going to do it at the right moment, but more so than moment with the right partners. And it's all key to finding that group. Again, back to how we're qualifying franchisees, making sure they're the right group. We're going to be tougher with international because we're going to want to make sure that they know the markets they're operating in and they can be the right partner because protecting the Ace brand is number one for us.
Yeah, it's a great name too, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great. All right, so we talked about franchisees ensuring their success. What kind of systems, I think as you're scaling up, right, with 3, 4 open locations, you're going to be at 15 by the end of the year. You got another 100 beyond that. In terms of building the plane before it's heading down the runway or while it's heading down the runway, what kind of advice would you recommend?
Yeah, that's a great question. Building the plane while going down the runway. Every deal you can get excited. You can really, see every opportunity, whether it's a real estate deal or something else in the business. And there's a lot of points to pivot. And I think, the only thing always joke, I'm glad I went to get my full-time MBA, but it was the most useless degree I ever had. And the one thing I took away from that 2-year experience was do what you do and do it well and don't pivot too far away from what you're really good at. And every day, everybody on our team is introduced with a million different things, whether it's our operations group saying, hey, do you want to do golf simulators? Hey, do you want to try out X, Y, and Z? Hey, do you want to introduce a tap beverage into this? Myself saying, hey, do you want to enter this market? There's a million ways I could spend my time. Everybody could spend their time. And, the one thing we continue to do is daily is check in, realign at what we're good at, and just keep staying down that path and not taking unnecessary risks and really just saying, okay, what's the right way to grow this to be the right partner to our franchisees? And ultimately, it all boils down to one thing that I keep saying, grow the game responsibly.
Nice. So what keeps you up at night? I mean, you've got a million things going on.
Mm-hmm.
What are you worried about?
What Honestly, it's a reset in, the real estate game right now. It's all-time competitive market in the retail space. Back in 2008, as everybody knows, everybody stopped building shopping centers because everybody said it was all going online. Omni-channel was the hot word from 2012 to 2018.
Yeah.
COVID came around, all of the discount retailers started getting active. Box space is now at a premium. Rents have gone up, vacancy is low. And we're signing again, all the deals we're signing, they're very good rent premiums. It's really hard to get through our real estate committee and through myself. So, like I said, we'd rather sign 20 leases a year that are good versus 60 just to do a deal and plant a flag. What just keeps me up in general sometimes is there going to be a reset in the retail real estate space because it's almost too good to be true. And we all see these waves up and down, up and down. It's not going to impact us at Ace too much because we're doing the right deals. We're keeping that thought, what keeps me up at night in the back of our head in thought is as we approve and look through every deal. But you know, that's what keeps me up at night. Actually, even more so, what keeps me up at night is what a gold rush of an industry this has become. There's again, I wouldn't call it competition, I'll call it activity. And the amount of people that are entering the space without really thinking thoughtfully through how do you build a sustainable business and certain things. I won't name names, but there are already groups that have made the big splash on Good Morning America or different things that have failed to date. And we're going to see a lot more of that coming. And, again, back to our mantra, grow the game responsibly, mix that with the real estate side of things and doing the right deals. That's what keeps me up at night. It's not a concern for us, but it is something that's always in the back of our mind.
Okay. Back to I think on the real estate side, on the lease signing side, are you open to being a sublessee of a large national tenant that's got space available? We have a few folks that are on this call that they represent pretty large boxes.
Yeah. Yes, usually, I don't like to jump through too many hurdles. If you are a quality of a, like I say, old Bed Bath & Beyond, PetSmart, that kind of characteristic where it's simple plug and play, great. We always look at everything as what is our development cost? What's the cost of getting it to where we need to be? I did dispositions for Rite Aid and Kroger for a long time, so I really understand the sublease market and everything that comes with that. As long as it's a plug and play and we're not having to move a lot of coolers in old grocery spaces or HVAC units are totally baked on the rooftop and our development costs are going to be too high, absolutely, we're open to looking at it. We're trying to find the right space, but we're also trying to get the right deal terms and solve for a certain development cost for our franchise partners at the end of the day.
Yeah, yeah, good to know. So what questions have not been asked so far that you're surprised hasn't come up? Because you've probably seen so many different types of gotchas out there. Anything that we missed?
No, honestly, I think your questions have been very spot on. So nothing that comes to mind.
Okay. No, that's good to know. We got a pretty smart audience, and again, they represent all sorts of sizes, scaling up. Some have really large footprints, and they've got existing systems. So this has been very helpful. As you've done so much, right, from the real estate side, in big brokerage, looking at different technologies and systems, what was some of the best advice you listened to? And then I'm going to ask the question of what advice that you want to share with others. It's the
Let's
advice that you've heard that stuck with you.
let's see. Best advice. Give me a little bit of time on that one.
No, that's fine. Man, it's a stumper.
It is a stumper. There's a
Yeah.
lot of good advice that's come. Um,
But I
you
think
know,
you hit on a few things, and I'll just do some warming up here.
yeah.
You talked about focus, not to be distracted, uh, because there is a bunch of different shiny objects that can take your eye off the ball as you grow. And I think not just in launching a business, but in terms of operating a business as well. There's all sorts of gotchas that are out there, whether it's a permit or it's a license. The moment that you take your eye off the ball and don't have a system in place for that, you're not focused on building
Yeah.
your brand and bringing more customers in and growing. So,
It's
uh,
Here's what I'll tell you. I remember when I
yeah.
started at CBRE, one of my mentors told me it's a relationship business and it's not just IQ, it's EQ. Sure, Diego, you can do the best model in the world and everything else, but how are you going to deliver that message to somebody that maybe doesn't understand that and make them feel comfortable and like they're a part of the transaction and bring everybody together? And utilizing that, same thing in building a business. We all have strengths and weaknesses. We all have different things that we bring to the table. And ultimately, leveraging that relationship side of the thing, of that advice has been paramount to us in terms of getting a head start on this race because, knowing who the landlords are, being able to pick up that phone and having a good interaction with them. It's not just about cutting the deals and what can you put on paper. It's a lot about the relationship side of things.
Oh, man, that speaks so well to, the core tenets of, I think, any successful business. You've got to focus on EQ. Where people don't care what you know until they know that you care. And it's such a very simple thing, but you got to listen and you got to be empathetic and make sure that they're part of that whole ecosystem. That's wonderful to hear. There's tons of studies all around that about making sure that people know the why. Why are they joining you? Okay, yeah, you're going to make a whole ton of money. Yes, you're going to have tons of subscriptions, but the true why is the journey, right? Is the destination.
Exactly.
It's some people just don't get it. It's like, no, 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 I'm going to focus on tomorrow. I'm going to focus on tomorrow. No, no, enjoy the moment because you're impacting so many people. But fantastic that you shared that. We've got some other questions coming in, and let's talk about columns and spacing and like open space within one of your, the retail boxes, if you will. So how do columns play a role, and can they be moved? How do you deal with that kind of thing?
Yeah, well, this is definitely part of the secret sauce, but it's not the secret sauce because everybody in the industry knows this.
Yeah.
It's interesting, if you're really interested in the pickleball space, go to pickleheads.com. They've been a great partner of ours from the
Okay.
beginning. They list every single court that's out there. Look up the indoor court facilities in your market. Walk through. The one thing you're going to notice that's different is court spacing. And that's going to be on the edges of the court, the kitchen. Do they have fencing up? Are they just open and balls are flailing between courts? That's a key different part in the experience. So at Ace, our mantra has always been to build the best possible playing conditions. And, by the governing body that tells what the rules of pickleball are, standard courts are 30 by 60. And we got to make sure we're able to lay out a space to be able to deliver that side of the court without columns hindering that, or being able to put in the fencing so that the balls aren't bouncing back and forth between courts, because that just is a suboptimal playing condition. So for us, courts are 30 by 60. It's a geometry equation. It's what are the dimensions of the box against the column spacing. For us, as soon as we see a deal we like and we know it has legs, as I mentioned, we have our development team of 10 plus people. We're doing, 20 test fits a week to get through and figure out, okay, what is this? How many courts can we get in a space? What does it look like? What's the real opportunity here? And there are some spaces where it's 40,000 square feet and you see 7 courts and you're like, bad efficiency ratio. There are some where you see 30,000 square feet and you see 13 courts and you're like, great efficiency ratio. So, it all just boils down to what are we playing with?
Yeah. So in some cases, then you may walk from a deal because of that bad efficiency ratio. Does it make sense to spend money to move columns? I mean, listen, it's a great question.
Yeah.
I love the fact that these random column and court spacing questions come up.
Yeah, I'm always a little bit of a Scrooge on anything that requires lifting a ceiling because I've
Yeah.
never seen it done before. Never seen us dig down to on a floor before to get the clear height. And same thing with columns. I think moving columns is really hard. I've had some landlords that do it. We have luckily have the partnership and the development team to figure it out and run through that scenario. It's been done, but for the most part, we just like to play with what we have and not add unnecessary parts to the deal because we know that presents a risk that maybe we don't need to take on.
Okay. Good deal. So we have covered just a really wide gamut, and obviously people can, I'm sure they want to reach out to you. They probably are saying, hey, we've got some great space. Um, are you willing to be contacted?
Yeah, absolutely. Please.
Okay, good deal. All right, so back to the advice side. The what's the worst advice you ever heard?
Worst advice. That's even harder, I think. Worst advice. Keep your head down, follow a predetermined path, and success will come. And growing up in this world, you go to certain schools, you do X, Y, and Z. I joke about my MBA all the time. Like I said it on here, most useless degree I've ever had. It was just a great vacation for 2 years, and I learned some things, but not much. But what you learn is like there was a path that everybody says, okay, if I do X, Y, and Z, it's going to equal success. And when I met Jay is honestly, and I'm not just blowing smoke up his behind, I joke, but when we met I was 23, he was 24, and went down the path of Sky Zone, we built something and we built the relationships with people and we took calculated risks and we just went forward with things that people were like, you're crazy for doing that. Because if I had $1 for every time somebody told me I was crazy for a decision in my life or whatever, I'd be almost a billionaire probably. And jumping back into the deep end, taking the risk and realizing that the path that other people charter, just following that isn't to what's going to lead to success. That's what's helped all of us at Ace because we all have that exact same quality is we're not just following people and saying, okay, thank you, thank you. We're going to be able to see through the forest and know how to get through the forest to the end point we want to be.
Yeah. Calculated risk, I think, was a very important part of what you said. It's not being afraid of failure, but making certain that you test and you don't follow a playbook. This is not a manual of life and business
No.
building. It is, especially in a brand new category like you're establishing yourself as a leader for sure.
Yeah.
That's totally spot on.
That's the best way to say it. It's not a playbook of life.
Yeah, if somebody can, like, New York Times bestseller, here's the playbook for life. Please buy the playbook for parenting, the
Yeah,
playbook for going to college. Give me a break.
exactly. And we were all sold this dream, at least in my generation, of you got to go to the right schools, you got to do these XYZ, you got to work for these banks and everything else. It's, yeah, no.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was a CPA for 15 years, Big Four for a few years, then an Imagineer at Disney. And I realized, man, I'm like the stupidest person here in the graduating class, because I look at the sea of graduates, degrees in microbiology and astrophysics and doctors and dentists. And I'm like, holy cow, there's a whole school of knowledge that's out there. But you just got to stay humble, or you got to have your EQ and just love your work, stick to it, and surround yourself with great people, right? Because you said it very well. It's like relationships. We're in the
Love.
relationship business, and you got to learn, and you got to continue to educate people, and always listen. That's wonderful. All right, so you've shared some really great advice. Let's see if there's any other questions that are coming across. We'll give it a minute or so. I'm going to ask you what's next for Ace. Is it execution, signing up more franchisees, or just opening?
It's all of the above. We're bringing on new franchisees. We're cycling through, getting the first wave of leases that we signed through the development process. Doors open a lot this year. A lot of new leases being signed this month in July. Then, cycling through the LOIs, 'cause it's just, you never know. Every day, I can get a deal done in 3 days sometimes, where at least expected going from time of a conversation to a done LOI. So it's just, a surprise. And then, continuing to grow and do things well.
That's great. Well, we are in the education business. We're in the listening business. So here I am as a founder of the company. I want to ask you, Diego, what are the things that we should do as a company at Lease Cake, things that we can potentially improve upon? You know enough about our product and our platform. Give me your couple of bullets.
Well, that's a hard one too. Improve upon. No, I think, and continue, you guys have had a great path, and, I really respect the product. So I think, just continuing is, focused on your area of lease admin and all the pieces you do, continuing to listen to the clients, what they need, and being able to build that flexible product, because we all know this, there's not one product that fits every need. And I think, continuing to be able to remain flexible, hear what people need, and being able to do that with reinventing the wheel, that's key. And you guys clearly have succeeded at that so far.
Well, I appreciate that. There has been certainly a change in the market as it relates to real estate. I mean, how competitive it is, but oftentimes, at least in the last 5 to 10 years, real estate has been taken for granted as it relates to, hey, I got a great concept. I got a great burger empire I'm building, a great pickleball empire or massage empire or fitness empire. And oftentimes the things that bite you are the things that you signed 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and all of those, the market's definitely changed. So that's
Yeah. I'm sorry, you said something really interesting. So that's why I was employee number 4, because we realized real estate is number one importance to making this endeavor succeed, because it's what you signed 5 years ago. It's what you signed 10 years ago. It's what you signed 2 years ago, whatever it is, that's going to set this thing up for success. And it's the biggest operating cost in terms of pickleball. So you're right. Real estate's taken for granted. A lot of people think they can do it, and they don't get into the terms and sign things blindly. And it's a big thing that I wish more people would pay attention to.
nice. So we're on to something here.
You're absolutely on to something.
Wonderful to hear. Well, let's see. As we wrap up, we appreciate everyone's attention and involvement. We love the questions that came across. Next week, we have a 100-unit Dunkin' franchisee that has built an incredible legacy. And joining them is the leadership of the franchise team from Inspire Brands. So that'll be a very telling conversation about how franchisor-franchisee relationships are essential, just like you were saying, Diego. Like, it is the relationship business. Surround yourself with people you trust. There's no playbooks in life. There's no playbooks to business building, but you have to have partners all along the way. So we are super thankful. Diego Pacheco, Chief Growth Officer of Ace Pickleball Club. You've been such a great sport. Appreciate you answering all these curveball questions and questions from our audience. Thank you so much. We are recording this. We are going to share the recording with anyone that's registered. So please make certain that you cascade it off to anyone that is interested. We are in the education business and love the new category that you're building, Diego. So we will be signing off. Thank you so much. We will see you all next week. Take care.
Thanks.